fault. Okay? So I get a call one day from the Coshocton County Sheriff's Office. And they said, hey, we have an individual by the name of Claude Hawkins that was shot and killed on federal property at Wills Creek Dam. And, figured you guys would want to know about it since it's on federal property. Absolutely. I made a beeline out to Coshocton. Started working with one of the detectives out there by the name of Dane Schreier. And Dane and, Mike and Denny and, all the people from Coshocton were tremendous to work with. They took me out to the crime scene. They showed me. They think Claude was down, well, they know that he was down at the river's edge, standing on a rock, and somebody came by and shot him in the back with a high-powered rifle, killing him. They had already, by the time I got there, done a search for shell casings and things, and couldn't find any. There were no witnesses, no anything. So, it turned out that Claude was a black man. We thought, could this be racially motivated? I mean, we don't know. Let's go up to, he was from Mansfield. And we went up and interviewed his family, interviewed the neighbors, interviewed his co-workers. He worked at a manufacturing plant up in Mansfield. Everybody to a T said Claude was one of the nicest human beings you would ever meet. And he was well loved, well respected by everybody. So clearly, doesn't look like it's going to be racially motivated as far as we can tell. And Dane happens to remember, he said, Harry, I remember we had over last couple of years, a couple of people that have been shot and killed, and by somebody, with a rifle. And I don't know that those cases have ever been resolved. And we started looking into it. Dane remembered they were in Belmont County, Tuscarawas County, and Muskingum County. We called the investigators from those counties, and we brought them to Coshocton, and we had kind of a sit-down to go over the cases and see if, in fact, if there were any similarities. Well, each investigator came, we sat down, went over the case, same thing. Somebody by themselves, either engaged in walking outside on a rural road or hunting or fishing, was shot and killed by somebody with a high-powered rifle. No witnesses, no shell casings left behind. So, here we are. We have those three cases. We just had one in Coshocton now, so we have 4 cases. And they all sound similar. And I had been through profiling training with the FBI. But at this point, I felt more comfortable in calling the behavioral science unit and asking them to come out and join us and just confirm what we're thinking, that these cases are related. So they came out, we went through everything, and sure enough, they agreed with us. They said it sure sounds like they're connected. And we had one other thing that was really of interest. In Belmont County, a young man by the name of Jamie Paxton was shot and killed, just out looking for places to boat hunt, minding his own business, doing nothing wrong. Been shot and killed by somebody with a high-powered rifle. The mom of Jamie, Jean Paxton, which I know some of you know, started writing letters to the Times-Leader newspaper that happens to cover Belmont County. And she started talking about what a wonderful kid Jamie was. He's only like 21 at the time. And, was well-liked, didn't have any enemies, and that this coward has killed my Jamie and taken him from us, causing us incredible pain. And she wrote a number of letters. And the Times leader printed them. And so when we're having this little meeting to decide whether or not we want to work all the cases together like they're all connected, Belmont County Sheriff Common Court, Fred Thompson, great guys, they bring up the fact about this letter that they received. And the letter basically, and I'll summarize it for you, it basically says, I am the killer of Jamie Paxton. This will be my only communication. You'll never receive anything from me again. To the sheriff's office, don't blame yourself for this if you don't solve it, if you haven't solved this case. Jamie and I had absolutely no interaction. He didn't know me, I didn't know him. He was just some random person that I saw by themselves, and I decided to go ahead and shoot him. So he talked about the location of Jamie's car and where Dillon, where the shooter had actually parked his vehicle. Talked about what transpired as Jamie was walking down the hill. Dillon fired several shots, hitting him and killing him. And he said, he got back into his vehicle and thought no more of shooting Jamie than shooting a bottle at a dump. And he said it wasn't until later when he saw the account of the incident in the Times Leader newspaper that he realized how young Jamie was. He said that was the moment I had some remorse. Again, mostly no. But anyway, so here we have this letter. We all believe that it's most likely legitimate. I mean, there was always the possibility that somebody wrote the letter to take the pressure off the sheriff. Don't feel bad, don't blame it on the sheriff, if they don't solve the case, because, there's no, but we pretty much to a T believe that it was, in fact, legitimate letter. One of the things in the letter, and I want you to remember this phrase, he said, I could go talk to somebody about what I've done and turn myself in. He said, but it would serve no purpose at this time. It would serve no purpose at this time. And it's kind of an interesting comment. But, moved on. And, so we decided to release a profile of the offender. I'll just mention some of the characteristics. Number one was a male, predominantly males going looking for hunting and fishing and things like that. White male. This is a predominantly white area. If it would have been a black person or some other race, they would have stuck out. Maybe somebody would have recognized, hey, what's that Asian guy doing here? Or whatever the case may be. That because he showed some crime scene savvy by picking up his shell casing for that, we figured that he was a little older, more mature than certainly like a 17, 18-year-old kid that goes out and just decides to shoot somebody. He pick and choose when he shot, so he had self-control. And I failed to mention this, and I apologize for that, I skipped over it. While we were forming the task force, we had a fifth homicide. Gary Bradley was shot and killed in Noble County. And again, it was the same thing, high-powered rifle, no shell casings. Gary was out by himself, just fishing, and he gets shot and killed by somebody. So now we have 5 cases. So we now have this profile of an individual. We believe that he was probably in his 30s to 40s, because he showed maturity in that. Because he had, the homicides only occurred on the weekend and the day before Thanksgiving, which a lot of people take off that day. And most likely he was employed. and that because he was employed and seemed to be capable of having some self-control in that, he was most likely married, may even have a family. So we released this profile to the media, and of course they were all over it because this is a big deal. This is the talk of the area back then. You know, people are afraid to go out walking, go hunting, go fishing, because of all this going on. And so it made the headlines and everything. And we started getting tips. A lot of the tips were from disgruntled ex-wives and girlfriends who wanted to call in and give their ex-husband or boyfriend a little thrill, being named a suspect. So we were able to eliminate most of just about all the people very quickly by looking at work records. If you weren't available to commit one of the homicides, then we ruled you out because the cases were so similar, we believe it was the same individual. And so, various ways of eliminating people. And then we get a call from a guy by the name of Richard Fry. Richard Fry calls the task force, and he says, hey, he said, I read the profile. A friend of mine fits the profile to a T. He said, I don't think it's him, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't mention it. He said, I got a friend named Tom Dillon. He fits his profile to a T. I know he drives through the areas where all these, the homicides actually occurred in 5 different counties. So I know he goes through those areas. I've been with him when he shot and killed animals, dogs, cats, horses and cows with a bow and arrow. And he said he's kind of a goof. And he's asked me before, he's made comments before that he follows the investigation. And he looked at me one time, he said it scared the hell out of me. So he looked at me and he goes, do you think I could ever kill anyone? He was like, well, of course not, Tom. So anyway, he calls us. We get all these tips, right? So tips in Central Ohio I'm following up on. Belmont County, the sheriff on the court and Fred, and Noble County, Landon Smith, and his folks were down there. Tuscarawas County, Walt Wilson was investigator at the time, later became the sheriff of Tuscarawas County. But we would divide the leads up, the tips, and each one of us would go out and cover the tips in our particular area. And we'd all come back like hurt puppies, we'd like, oh man, I washed my guys out, back to square one. Walt would come back, because Tom Dillon actually lived in Canton, and in the Canton area, worked at the Canton Water Works, was a draftsman for the water works, actually had a pretty good job, and Walt would come back every day, and he'd go, I can't eliminate Dillon. He goes, he was available, he took the Wednesday before Thanksgiving off, his boss says he's a very bright individual. He said he could have my job, but he's too lazy. All he wants to do is put in his work and get out. And so, Walt, kept trying to eliminate him, and he couldn't. So we finally came to a point where let's focus our attention on Dillon. So we decided to run surveillance on Dillon. And I just want to mention this to you so that you get kind of a perspective. When you're if you want somebody to follow you, you drive kind of slow, and hopefully you don't get caught at the light, or you don't get caught at the light, because you can have things happen that you can lose the person you want to follow very quickly. Well, when we're working on surveillance on Dillon, out in these rural roads where there's nobody else on the roadway, you can't have Dillon and then 4 cars right behind him. I mean, he's going to know this, right? So we had to back way off, and we actually had the FBI clean up as often as we could get them up to help give us the ability to back off on the surveillance so we didn't burn the surveillance. And, again, in the book, those of you that have read it or haven't read it yet, I talk about a couple of situations that were frightening. We were stuck in a position where we were concerned about, if we saw Dillon about to want to kill somebody, could we react fast enough to get up there to prevent it from happening? Second thing that we were concerned about was every morning, Saturday and Sunday morning, Dillon would drive to the local dairy mart, and he would purchase a 12-pack of beer or some quarts of beer, and go driving, drive hundreds of miles. Now we know Dillon's drinking, so here's the dilemma. How do we let Dillon, knowing that he's driving with alcohol on the roadway, what happens if he goes left of center and wipes out a family? How can we live with ourselves? I mean, this was serious concern for us. Kind of the good news about it is, following Dillon, he never sped. I mean, he went with the speed at the speed limit. Thank you. Speed limit. He didn't weave. He didn't drive erratic. So we truly believed that we could let him go for a period of time. And our goal was to try to follow him and see what he did, see if we could build some evidence on him, and get him somehow connected to the other homicide. Because right now, we have no evidence. All we had was Mr. Fry saying Tom's a weird guy, right? So, unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, in our judicial system, there's a lot of strange guys out there, but, that's not enough to put them in jail. Anyway, so we're following him around. We catch him going to the Times Leading newspaper, getting another edition. Apparently he stopped his subscription, and we're coming up on an anniversary date, and Tom wanted to get a newspaper to cover see what was going on in the investigation. He subscribed to one of the other newspapers. So we have some circumstantial evidence. The one thing, and again, I've got it in the book, so you'll read about it, but one thing we had in our back pocket all the time was Dillon had been caught in a park in Canton by a park ranger who caught him with a silencer in his weapon. Now, silencers are a violation of the law. It's a violation of federal law. Park ranger arrested him, turned the case over to the ATF. ATF prosecuted him federally. The judge gave Dillon probation. He said, so this is his first offense and everything, and said you are to stay away from guns. You have nothing to do with them. You can't purchase them, can't sell them, can't do anything. And so one day we were on surveillance. We always knew that, right? So if we ever saw Dillon commit a violation of probation, we'd be able to arrest him on the spot if we wanted to. Well, we followed him up to Cleveland one day, to the IX Center, and he walked in, there was a gun show. And we went inside with him, and we saw him purchase a handgun, which is a violation of his probation. So now we have the opportunity to arrest him at any point that we choose. So we have been on it for a while, and now we're to the point where, we're not getting really any further as far as the evidence goes. Let's move the investigation into stage 2. And what we wanted to be able to do was get Dillon's picture out there and tell folks, if anybody bought or sold weapons to this man or from this man, let the task force know. So that was our goal. So it came time to take him down to we've gone long enough. So we came up with a plan that, again, we had behavioral science kind of helped mastermind this plan. But the plan was, a lot of times these serial killers and that, when they are in the heat of the moment, when they're actually getting ready to kill somebody and actually kill somebody, their emotions are sky high. They're like, off the balls excited. And what we wanted to do was to try to interview Dillon in a situation where we could overwhelm him with what we knew about him. The crime scene photos that we had, the surveillance images that we had that we took of him driving all over the place and getting up, images at the IX Center and a bunch of other places in there. And just overwhelm him with information that the fact that we knew about his work record and all that stuff. And it just overwhelmed him to get him hopefully in that frame of mind where he would be excited and might say something that would incriminate him. So we came up with a plan that on a certain day, it was Saturday morning, we would, since we knew Dillon's routine was to drive to the Dairy Mart, there just so happened to be an architectural building right across the street, just a small wooden business. We went in and we said, "Hey, I'm Barry with the FBI. Can we use your building?" I'm like, "Sure." And I said, we're thinking maybe Saturday. And they go, "Good, that's fine, it's yours. We don't have anybody who works on Saturday here, so you can have it." He said, "Do you have like a lunchroom or any place we can put stuff up on walls or not?" And the lady took us downstairs into the basement where they have a lunchroom with tables and stuff. And she goes, "You can do whatever you want to down here. We won't bother them. We'll be back Monday. Just, return the keys to us." And so, we had that all set up. We were going to do two simultaneous search warrants. One at Dillon's business, at the water work, to search his desk and his locker and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, we were going to hit Dillon's house and see if we could find any weapons that might be related, any connection with maps or notes or anything like that he might have kept a diary or whatever. And I'd have the opportunity to interview his wife at the time, see what she knew, if anything. So this was all planned out. Saturday morning comes, 7 o'clock in the morning. Dillon, as usual, gets up, heads to the Dairy Mart. We immediately hit the business, the waterworks, and his residence. Walt and I, Walt Wilson and I were in my car, and we're together. We're the ones that put the stuff up on the walls and everything. We're going to be the ones that are going to try to interview him. So Dillon comes down and driving his red pickup truck, parks in front of the Dairy Mart. I pull my car in behind him to block him. And Walt and I, we didn't want to go in and make a scene in the Dairy Mart. We didn't know if Dillon was armed or maybe take hostages or what, so we wanted to wait until it came out of the store. We see Dillon get his beer, comes walking out. Walt and I get out of my car. I walk up to him and I said, "Hi, Mr. Dillon. My name is Harry Trombitis. I'm with the FBI. This is my partner, Walt Wilson, with the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office. We'd like to talk to you about something that we think you'd be very interested in." You should have seen Dillon's jaw just about hit the floor, the pavement. And he goes, "Okay." I'm thinking, this can't be working. You design it like this, but it doesn't work like this, only on TV, right? So he puts his beer down and he starts walking with us across the street to the architectural building. When we get to the edge of the parking lot, right before the street, he stops. He says, I think I need to call my attorney. Okay. We had ATF with us since it was their warrant and everything. We gave the signal for ATF to come in, and Joe Bisbee and one of his buddies came in and put Dillon under arrest and carted him off to the Stark County Jail. Walt and I are like beat puppies. I mean, we're so disappointed. All we could think of is we screwed it up, we ruined it. You know, we had one chance to do this and we blew it. And I mean, we felt awful. So we go into the architectural firm and we take everything off the walls and the tables and we throw it in a box that I had. And Walt and I get in my car and we drive to where the bosses are enjoying breakfast and having coffee. And we walked in, and of course I could tell right away that things didn't go very well. But they tried to say, oh, you know, you guys did the best you could. You know, there was really a slim chance that he was going to go anyway. You know, don't worry about it. You know, and while we're talking, Walt's cell phone rings. It's the Stark County Jail. And they go, hey, Dillon wants to talk to you guys. So Walt said, we're on our way. So Walt and I took off towards the Stark County Jail. Because he had told us he wanted an attorney, and Jamie knows that she's an attorney, but we couldn't approach Dillon. We had to make it abundantly clear that Dillon was requesting to talk to us. We called the prosecutor's office up. We said, here's the situation. He told us he wanted an attorney. We didn't have to question him anymore. Now he wants to talk to us. He's initiating this desire to talk to us. The prosecutor said, just make it abundantly clear when you're interviewing him that it's because he wants to talk to you, not because you're circling back to talk to him. And so we go into the jail, and they bring Dillon in, and he sits down. Now the FBI, we don't record. Now I don't know if they do anymore or not. We always had the thing that once you put a tape recorder down in front of somebody, they immediately shut up. They don't want to talk. So we in the FBI take really good notes, and then we transfer it out to a report called an FD-302. It's testimonial in nature. And I think to this day, I'm not sure if we record still to this day. But Walt being with the sheriff's office, they don't have that requirement. They can record. Walt brings out his handy little recorder, and he records the interview. We make sure Dillon understands, go through the paperwork, you know, vice and right form and all of that he initiated the warrant, you know, the desire to talk. And we start interviewing him. And one thing that I always kind of prided myself on, and I know other investigators do the same thing. If you walk into an interview with somebody and you call them, you know what, you piece of, you know, you deserve to burn in hell. You know, if you're going to approach somebody like that, you're not going to get them to talk, to cooperate. So I always try to treat people with dignity and respect. And, you know, say that what's over in the past, you know, is done. All we can do is make things better right now. And so that's kind of the attitude that we had. We're working on Dillon, and we're getting to a point where I would almost feel that he was about to maybe make some admissions, but he always kind of gained control of himself and stopped short of that. And so we're not getting, you know, the information that we need. And we get a knock on the door from the security, jail guards. Security officers going, Dillon's got to go for his arraignment here shortly. So we're like, okay, I'm going to give it one more shot. And I talked to Dillon, and said, come on, Tom, you're responsible for this. We know you're responsible. I'm really, really working on it. And he stops and he goes, it would serve no purpose for me to say anything at this point. And I said, ding! I've seen that statement before. So, even though we didn't have any evidence at this point, really, other than circumstantial evidence, if you want to call subscription or newspaper or, whatever. When I heard that, I knew 100% that Tom Dillon was our man. He said exactly what was in that letter. And so anyway, we go, through the process. We are able to release his picture because he was arrested. We tell, Ohio basically that anybody that bought and sold weapons from this guy, give us a call, let us know. And we get a call, it was in December, from a gentleman by the name of Al Coke. And Al said, hey, I saw Dillon's picture up there. I wanted you guys to know I was at a gun show in Massillon, and I bought a gun from Dillon. It was a Swedish Mauser, 7.5 times 65, and which is exactly what our firearms people said most likely killed Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins. And he said, not only do I have the gun, but I have the ammunition that he sold me at the time. He said there's some bullets missing, some rounds missing. And he said, I got the ATF paperwork where it has the date and the time that I bought it, and Dillon's signature, and the property that I bought from him. And after I picked myself up off the floor, I said, Mr. Cope, we'll be right over. I remember it was snowing like crazy. I leave my home in Dublin and drive towards where Mr. Cope lives out by camp. And when we get there, Dane, myself, and I called Joe Bisbee from ATF, and we all met at the house. And I said, Mr. Cope, we're here to take a look at what you bought from Dillon. He goes into the back room, brings out the Swedish Mauser, and it's exactly how it was described to me, that it was, the gun that was used to kill two of our people. Brings out the ammunition, and then he brings out the ATF thing. And I was concerned because he bought the gun from Dillon on April 5th of 1992. Gary Bradley's homicide was April 5th, 1992. But it was in the morning. And by the time, Mr. Cope bought the gun from Dillon, it was in the afternoon. And so there was enough time for him to kill Gary Bradley, drive up to Massillon, and try to get rid of the gun. And so we were relieved about that. So now we have a gun that we suspect is involved in two of the homicides. Instead of shipping the gun down to the FBI firearms unit to examine, Dane said, I'm driving that son of a bitch down there. And so we arranged for Robert Murphy, one of our firearms guys, to meet Dane at FBI headquarters, take ownership or possession of the gun, and he immediately went up and started examination on it. The next day, I get a call from Bob Murphy, the firearms examiner, and he goes, Harry, he said, just want you to know the Q1 specimen, blah, 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 it matches with the, I'm going, what the hell are you saying? I don't, I'm not a lab guy, Bob. He goes, Harry, you dumb shit. Well, I'm telling you, you know, you've got the gun that killed, for sure, 100% killed Gary Bradley, and most likely killed Swan Hawkins. And he said, I'm like 97% sure there's some points of identification I need to get on the Hawkins homicide, but he said, I'm real close. So at this point, we notified prosecutor's office in Noble County because that's where we got our best case, right? The firearm is positively identified. And Lucian Young, the young prosecutor out there, was going to end up having the case. It was potentially a death penalty case because he had killed 2 individuals, aggravated circumstances with a firearm. And so we brought in Mike Miller, who is the former prosecutor for Franklin County, to be like sort of a co-chair with Lucian, because Mike's handled all kinds of homicide cases. Lucian had very, very few, so he didn't have the experience. So the 2 of them were going to team together. We had enough for the death penalty, and that's what we were going to see. We get to a point where Dillon starts having hearings and things, and he sees me at these hearings, and he tells his attorney, Roger Senator, he says, I want to talk to him. So at the hearings, each of these hearings, Tom and I go into a room and we talk. Basically, it's rapport building. He's telling me what jail life is like, and just, you know, like 2 guys having a beer or something. And all the time, I'm working on him going, oh, you know, we've got a death penalty case on you here. Eventually, he gets to a point where he tells us, he said, you know, I don't want to be on death row. He said, if I'm on death row, I've locked down 23 out of 24 hours. I won't have any access to magazines, the library, TV. So basically, you're just locked up all the time. If I get life in prison, I can go to the library, I can watch TV, I can do all these different things. And he said, I could see spending the rest of my life like that. So make the long story short, we ended up talking to the families, because investigators and prosecutors, in my humble opinion, should talk to the family, let them know what the status is, and if we sought the death penalty in this case, we would solve 2 of the cases, but the other 3, they would never know. Was Dillon the man or not, even though we believed he was. So we talked to the families, and we said, here's the deal. Tom will admit his involvement, but we got to drop the death penalty. So we can guarantee he'll do life in prison with no chance of parole. He'll never get out again, but that means we're dropping the death penalty. And each family said, we want everybody to have answers. We want all the families to have answers. You know, as long as he's not going to get out again, we're satisfied with that. So they ended up making a deal with Dillon, and he confessed to us, told us all the details about each of the homicides. He had a forensic psychologist by the name of Jeff Smallman that interviewed him and did some work on him. Dillon was not a crazy person. He was very normal in all respects. He had some antisocial characteristics, so do a lot of other people, but they don't run around killing people, right? But he said other than that, he was sane, knew what he was doing, knew right from wrong, and all of that. So he couldn't claim insanity, and so we went ahead, he confessed to us, he told us all the details of each of the homicides. Then he told us about a homicide, attempted homicide, we didn't know anything about. He was driving down the road one day and he sees a guy watching TV in his picture window in his living room. He stops his truck, gets out, tries to shoot the guy in the back of the head, but the bullet ricochets into the guy's shoulder, and he survives. We didn't even know that he was responsible for that. That happened 10 years before any of these homicides occurred. There were some other cases up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Steuben, Indiana, that we looked at as possibly being related. Tom assured us that he told us of everything that he'd have done. He knew that if we found out that he did anything else that he didn't tell us about, the death penalty was back in forth. And so he had a lot to lose, and quite honestly, the two homicides, Kalamazoo, and two guys were shot and killed that were hunting up in Kalamazoo. They were from close range. There was clearly interaction between the subject and the victims, and the person that shot him went through their pockets. That's something Dillon would never do. He wanted to shoot someone from a distance and then get the heck away. So we knew that, again, he was not responsible for that. So Dillon ends up pleading guilty to all the homicides, plus 150 arsons. Now, some of you know serial murderers often have arson in their background. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. They like to commit the fire, set the fire, and then back off and watch all the responding police and the fire department and that. That's what gives them their thrills. And he confessed to over 150 arsons. Now, you may think that Tom was just blowing smoke, that no way he could remember 150 arsons. We brought investigators in from each of the counties where the homicides took place, and they brought maps. And Tom would look at the map, and he'd go, I did a arson here, 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 and here. The investigators would go, right, you were right about 3 of them, Tom, but you got one wrong. He'd go, no, I didn't. He said, go back and talk to the property owner. See if they ever had a fire on their property. Investigators would go back, talk to the property owner, and find out, yes, in fact, a barn burnt down or an outbuilding burnt down, and they just never reported it because they didn't think it would do any good. So anyway, and 150 arsons, and then unbelievable, like 20 animal killings involving horses and cows with a bow and arrow, and hundreds of dogs and cats. The guy was a one-man crime ring. I talked about some of the things that we saw him do when we were on surveillance and that, if you're interested. So Dillon gets sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences. He's put in Ohio, they have a kind of a holding prison until the Department of Corrections figures out where they're going to put you. And Gene Paxton and some of the other family members put together a petition. Had people sign it. They wanted to see Dillon sent to Lucasville, down in Southern Ohio Correctional Facility, one of the roughest prisons in Ohio at the time, it was deep. I get a call from Kathy, the wife, and she and I talked a few times before. She goes, Harry, do you hear what those family members are doing? If they put Tommy up here in this one prison, it would be easy for myself and the son to go visit Tom. But they want him down in Lucasville. Do they not understand what a hardship that would be for me to have to drive down and see him? And I'm listening to this, and I'm going, Kathy, Tom shot and killed 5 people. Do you understand? Maybe he doesn't deserve, I'm sorry to say, maybe he deserves to go to the hardest prison, She hung out for now, she wasn't going anywhere with me. But, so anyway, over the years, Dillon and I communicated, would send me letters, let me know how he's doing. And then we stopped communicating. I put some of the letters in the book, and so you can read about it. One day in 2011, I'm sitting at home, and I get a call from somebody, and I don't know if it's in the media or who. They say, "Hey, did you hear Dillon died?" I said, "No." Well, yeah, he died. He had cancer. He passed away. That was the only time. You know, again, this was a horrible case, but a great case to work as an investigator. The teamwork that was done, the cooperation with the media, the citizens. I mean, it's just a phenomenal case. Again, no superstars. We all worked together as a team. We held the bad guy accountable and brought justice to the victims and their families. So, any questions before we wrap up and let you head with this game?
How true to life is the technology, the storyline, and the roles between the detectives and investigators in the series, such like Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and SWAT?
Oh yeah, everybody hates the FBI. Well, Jeff does, but you know, throughout my career, I really prided myself. I was a cop before I became an FBI agent. You know, I mean, I love these guys. The men and women that work in law enforcement, the work that they do every day to protect us and keep us safe, and the issues that they have, I mean, they have my utmost respect. So I always seem to get along with the investigators, and what you see on TV often is not reflective of real world. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't some detectives or agencies that don't like the feds, because that they do. Some of it's jealousy, others of it because agents acted like assholes, you know. And but I'd say that by and large, most agencies get along with the FBI, and you know, I'm very proud of the relationships that I always have with the investigators and that. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you so much thank you so much for all your work you did. One of the things I'm still listening to it, and Jamie is on the first president of space crew, so just the fact that you worked so hard, you know, this is it's amazing to think back how long it was now, you know, that the fact that you're doing this stuff. So thank you. And we have a couple questions actually. Yours was if Aunt Jean, sometimes she goes like that. If she had not written that letter, these letters, what do you think was your process on that?
I think, first of all, the letters that Jean wrote really helped me believe that Dillon was responsible. It was helpful to the investigation, but it wasn't something that, you know, keep in mind, we didn't know who the author of the letter was originally until after we arrested Dillon and he admitted that he was the one who was responsible. So I think the fact that Jean wrote those letters really played on Dillon's mind and caused him to want to write that response. Because Jamie's homicide was the only one that he ever responded to. And Jean's letters were the cause of that. So, yeah, I think they were very helpful overall. Were they necessarily a piece of evidence that we could use? If we wouldn't have done Dillon to confess that was him that sent the letter, he could have just denied that he was the author of the letter, and we had no proof that it was him. So, to answer your question again, I think it was very critical, but in a way that helps cement that we were on the right track with Dillon.
Another question I have is that what percentage of homicides, I don't necessarily say serial killers, but homicides that go homicide in the United States?
Well, the homicide rate used to be a lot better, and Jeff, you might be able to answer this better than me. I'm guessing, what, 65% go unsolved?
That'd be about right. Right now, it used to be a lot less.
Yeah.
It gets more people involved and more social. It becomes more that are not getting solved.
It used to be, if someone got killed, it was by the family, or a close friend. Then we started getting, these gangbangers and all these other things that people are just shooting people left and right. And so, the family involvement wasn't as significant as it used to be, I think. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, that family members still kill, but not to the extent that.
Just one more thing. So the reason I asked that is because on my husband's side, Jamie was his first cousin, and he was killed by shooting kill. On my side, one of my older brothers, his son was murdered when he was on vacation, and they were in North Charleston, South Carolina, and his wife, and there was no cameras on the hotel, and so he was just walking his little dogs, and he was shot and killed, and they never really found who did that.
So a large percentage of homicides are more, again, because it's not, there's not much family involvement as it used to be, as far as the numbers go. It's getting harder and harder to solve them. We don't have any evidence, and people don't want to talk, they don't want to be a snitch. Snitches get stitches. We've all heard that. Sometimes it gets harder and harder to solve some of these cases.
Drugs too.
But it happens.
The increase in drugs in the 1970s allowed for a lot more homicides to occur. So, you mentioned gangs.
Thanks, Jeff and Bill. Almost up to you. Any other? Oh, take care, guys. Yes.
In 1994, the Beaumont Correctional Institute so that when they considered Jamie having been killed, I was the officers that took inmates out to know.
Get them straightened around, will you?
We were at Union Cemetery. One of the inmates was trimming Jamie's wood, and then he said, "No, you're going to miss Jamie." And I thought, because they pay attention to those cases and stuff. They had newspapers like you would. So they recognized that. Well, then the owner, or the people that ran the cemetery told us that after he was murdered and Jean had written all the letters and everything, she was writing them to draw him out. And so we were told that the FBI, maybe it was Belmont County Sheriff, were across the street in the house.
Yeah.
Watching that grave.
We had, one of the things we do, do you mind if I just take that and run with it, or do you want to finish it? Okay, so we have, one of the things we do, and this is more from behavioral science unit, is on significant dates, like a homicide date, birth date, person responsible for killing somebody, it's not uncommon for them to visit the grave site and kind of make a confession, saying, I'm really sorry I had to shoot you, or whatever the problem is, but I've regretted it, I'm sorry, please forgive me, kind of thing. And so we do that anniversary date is coming up. And we in the sheriff's office put up a camera to video anybody that would happen to come by on that day, and somebody we didn't recognize or whatever the case may be, might give us a tip on could that have been the killer. So we have the camera up. Agents are sitting actually pretty much down the street, not too far away. But they see a guy come up. He's like got a cane, got a hat, mustache, kind of stands in front of Jamie's grave for a second, and then just walks off. And the agents see this, and they go, so they run out of the house. By the time they got down the street to where this guy was, he had walked somewhere where they couldn't find him. And of course, they were all upset. Everybody's upset because it could have been the person that was responsible for killing Jamie. We followed up on that with Dillon. He told us, he said, "Well, I saw the video that was on the media. That's not me." He said, I would never do that. I never went to that grave site. And when you look at it and compare the person that was at the grave site with Dillon, they don't look anything alike. They don't look like anything together. So we were absolutely convinced it was not. But it was an opportunity that we missed that, could have played an important role. Is there anything else on that?
No, I just always remembered
Yeah.
being told that.
Anything else? Any other questions? Yeah.
I have two questions. One, do you know why he flipped from, I need an attorney, I don't want to talk to you guys tomorrow, I want to talk to you guys. And
Well, it was the fear of the death penalty. Again, he and his attorney realized that if he doesn't cooperate and clear these other cases up, we've got a pretty good case on him for the death penalty. So, and he didn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison, on death row. So that was certainly something that had something to do with it.
And also, did he ever say like why? He just randomly picked people
He would say he left home that day. This was when driving around. Never knew that he was going to shoot anybody. He drive hundreds of miles every day, and we can verify it because we were on surveillance with him, on him. Every once in a while, he'd see somebody by himself, and he said, kind of like wasn't really a voice in my head, but something said, "There he is. Go back and get him." And he'd go make a U-turn or whatever, go back towards the individual, looking to see if anybody was in the area, any witnesses in that. And if he didn't see anything, then he'd go ahead and get out of his truck and shoot him. And again, that's what he's telling us. That's what he told the psychologist. So I mean, barring some other information, I have to believe that that's what occurred. Anything else? Yes.
Pure curiosity, do you remember what roads you had him on surveillance in Harrison
Oh,
County?
oh no. Oh my God. We're talking hundreds of roads. I drove to Woodsfield today, gripping the steering wheel, pouring down the rain. I'm going up and down. I honestly, God, don't remember any of the names of the roads or anything like that. They were in our surveillance log, I'm sure. If something significant happened, we wouldn't name all the roads that he traveled on.
Right.
But if he got out and shot some electric meters or threw a rock through a car window or something like I saw. But
It was just pure curiosity. You said
Yeah.
that you were in Harrison County and he was
what
following
street did you live in?
Yeah, exactly.
the one.
I know. He was following a jogger. And
That's what I was
Oh,
questioning.
what
the
nerve?
jogger.
No, it wasn't me. I'm a jogger. I have friends that jog. Okay, not me. But
That jogger story, again, it's in the book, and I don't want to spoil it for other people, but that was one of the most frightening things I can recall.
You mentioned about questioning him about the jogger. Did you ever
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, he said, I don't remember that. He said, I never would have.
Well, I kept reading and waiting for it, and I'm like, okay, something hasn't.
He didn't remember the incident. He gave no indication that he even, gave any thought to going back and
Right.
shooting him. But I mean, he's
Well,
all
female
over the
wasn't even
place.
his MO though, was it?
Well, could have been. I mean, Donald Welling, the first person he shot and killed, was walking along the roadway. And So, I mean,
Yeah, but most of
but
his,
he, huh?
most of his victims were male. And she,
All of his victims were male.
right, yeah, but she was, the jogger was female, so,
I mean, the plane could tell she was,
yeah.
you know, let me just tell you real quick. You know, I'm gonna run into something here. But, so we're out on surveillance, and we got the plane up. Dana and I are in my car, and we're back later on. And the plane, you know, it says, okay, guys, get ready. He's coming up behind a jogger. Looks like a female jogger, and she's jogging down the roadway. And Dana and I are like, you know, I've got my finger on the siren. You know, I've got wigwags, and I'm ready to, you know, respond. And the plane goes, okay, he's slowing down right next to her, and I'm going, oh my God, here we go. And for whatever reason, the plane said it quick enough. Oh, he's past the jogger, he's going down to the stop sign ahead, and he's making a right-hand turn, so he's leaving the area. So we back off. It's like, you know, thank God. And plane says, okay, he's down the next corner, he's making another right. And we're going, oh, he's changing directions. And then the plane says, okay, he's down to the next corner, he made another right-hand turn. So what he was doing was he was squaring the lines. And he was going to come back by the corner. And we're like, so we're ready to respond, and the jogger fortunately had gotten down to the stop sign and turned left. The plane calls out that Dillon has stopped at the stop sign, and he's just kind of sitting there. In my mind, he's possibly waiting to, you know, decide whether or not he's going to go after it or not. But then he turned right and he left the area again, so he didn't go after the jogger. But that was another incredibly tense moment that we had, and there were a number of them. Yes, ma'am.
Did he say if he ever recognized that you were following and doing surveillance on him? Did he know about the planes?
No. He told us during the interview, he said, I had no idea you guys were following.
You know, I live in Carroll County, and northeast Carroll County, and we had bonfires. I actually worked at this bar for 3 years, the hospital, and I can't imagine, because I would know if somebody they turned there too. You know, I just out on those country roads, but you could see, like up and down, you go back on a hill, you could see behind you. That's amazing when people.
Yeah, no, he told us, he was amazed we got pictures of him. You know, like different places that he stopped in, like different restaurants and, you know, different places like at the Dairy Mart and other work locations and stuff. He had no idea. He told us, no, if I would have known, I would have gone out of town, basically.
As a therapist, I'm very curious. I know that you said that he had antisocial tendencies. What was his formal diagnosis like after he was assessed?
Basically, you know, Judge Smallman said that, you know, he was just normal, had some antisocial behavior, but could not come up with any kind of a diagnosis or anything like that.
No formal mental health
No,
diagnosis. Wow.
not at all. He said he just didn't have it. You know, all the testing and everything that he did. Yes.
Did you learn anything about his childhood?
Did what?
Did you learn anything about his childhood?
Learned that his dad was absent quite a bit. His mom was very stern. There was no indication of any abuse or anything like that. But and Tom had 2 other brothers, and we talked to them, interviewed them, and they said there was no abuse or anything like that. So, again, you know, a lot of people get abused, but they don't go out and kill people. You know, I mean, so it could be a factor for some people, but not everybody. You know? I'm sorry. Yes.
Did he have any kids or any pets?
He had a child, a son.
Okay.
Yeah, and he shot some kind of like a squirrel or something in his backyard, and the neighbors saw Dillon chasing his son around with that squirrel. And the kid was like running and screaming. You know, I mean, that's the only thing that the neighbors did. That was kind of strange. But,
What was the age of Dillon?
he was 42 or 43. 42 or 43, depending on what part of our investigation. It would last basically over a year.
One of his arson cases was along ours. Was on the edge of a hayfield, and our son was over the hill in that hayfield that day.
Any other? Yes, ma'am.
The first part of my question had to do with technology.
What about
Because I'm
technology?
kind of curious, you know, and SWAT and SUV. There's a lot of talk about DNA and forensics, and in this case, did you use very much of that to capture him, or mostly surveillance?
We had surveillance. Obviously, the firearm that was recovered, the bullets that we recovered, the rounds, had some of his fingerprints on it. So I guess we did. I don't remember anything about any DNA, but definitely fingerprints. And yeah, I think that was it. I'm sorry I didn't answer your question.
No, that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of these serial killers or original arsonists have
And bedwetter.
Oh, really?
Allegedly. I haven't heard that one so much anymore, but that was like the three, bedwetter, arsonist, and your animal killer.
Well, I was just curious, the police,
like, have they gotten better at solving arsons? Like, do we have more invested in that? But I don't know how long they've been in jail or anything for arson.
Yeah, the arsons were, obviously back before 93, back in the 80s. I mean, we remembered them, before we had the advancements in a lot of the arson. But still, there's no connection to him.
She means
He
like
doesn't
nowadays,
have-
though, like you focus on arsons, because if you can stop the arsonist, you stop maybe
And progressive.
killers later.
No,
Yeah.
but we didn't know that they were connected.
No, not then, I mean like nowadays, I think was what, right. Do people focus
Well,
more
not
on
every
that?
arsonist is a serial
Right,
killer.
well, no,
But yeah, I understand. I kind of work backwards.
But there was mostly big old bars, the third bar down here. They would have cameras, they were using video cameras, and big old things. Just like video, people like, the arsonists all stick around
Right.
the crowd.
Yep.
They would
Several cases on this fire.
Cool. Anything else? Okay. I want to thank everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to Mike Palmer, Jamie for planting the seed for Mike to maybe get me out here. I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, I have some cards if you're interested in maybe taking a look at the other books. This will help narrow it down for you. So come by and grab a card. And I just thank you for being